Hi everybody, old Gary out here at the Fishing Shack, and welcome to this week's Fishing Chums Fishing Report. Boy, what a crazy week, the first week of June. Seems like we've had rain, thunderstorms, lightning just about every day this week. May even carry up into the upcoming weekend, I hope not. And hey, Catfish Rick, come on in. Anyway, we have a good show for you because the people who have been getting out are catching fish. Pretty good reports from out of Stockton. My gosh, we've had reports of walleye being caught, and for the few people that figured the crappie out, they've been catching some nice crappie at Stockton as well. And you know, one thing I seen on Truman at the Truman Lake group the other day, the guy was saying, hey, there's crappie can still be caught out here at Truman, they just have a lot better places to hide. And so we have to just go find them. And some of the boys have been finding some crappie out at Truman, and down below they're still picking up some fish. Good bass reports from out at Shoals, and the bass fishing at Table Rock has been fantastic. You know, they had that big bass tournament out here this week, the Major League Fishing, and gosh, those boys, Kevin Van Dam and those boys really racked up a lot of bass. And on today's program, we're going to be talking about walleye. That's right, walleye. We've had some pretty good reports of walleye being caught, a few at Table Rock, some over at Shoals, and at times some real good catches out at Stockton. So we have a lot to talk about. So let's go fishing.
Fish and Chums!
Well, welcome to this week's Fishing Chums. By golly, we're glad you're here, and I want to thank all the viewers. Boy, we've just got thousands of viewers viewing us each week on YouTube and also Facebook, and all of our groups out there. We've got a lot of groups, and we want to thank our groups that are getting together every week and watching Fishing Chums. And if you'd like to join us weekly, by gosh, never miss a segment, well, be sure to subscribe. Subscribe right here so you'll be with us on YouTube. Just push that button. Okay, we have some reports. We have the photo of the week. My gosh, I love this photo. Xander Mann was out with Grandpa the other day, Mike Mann, at Table Rock, and look at these beautiful fish that Xander picked up catching. Look at that, Xander. The photo of the week. Boy, you're a fishing guy. Boy, you have a good pal to take you fishing, your grandpa. And you've been catching some smallmouth out at Table Rock. Good going, Xander. I love that name, by the way. Awesome name. Xander lives out at Battlefield. So we always love to have you fishing with Grandpa out of Kimberlin City there. All right, okay, let's talk about, since we're talking about bass, at Table Rock. Boy, there's just been a lot of fish being caught. As I mentioned, the Major League Fishing had their big tournament out at Table Rock this week. Kevin Van Dam and all the guys, they caught so many fish on a variety of baits. Some people have been using small jerk baits catching fish out on the main lake. A lot of these fish have moved off the shore, getting out in their summer pattern. They've been picking them up on shaky heads, down off the bottom, 15, 18, 25, 30, 35 feet of water. They've been picking up some fish when we have overcast and a breeze on the bank, just off the bank, on spinner baits and also square-billed crankbaits, regular crankbaits. And they've been picking up some fish on plastics as well, pitching up on the bank. But boy, offshore seems to be the ticket right now. I've been out a couple times this week on Table Rock, getting off those long points, getting out anywhere from 15, 20, 25, 30, 35 feet of water. And I tell you what, Ned rig's been good, and a lot of fish can be caught, of course, on just a variety of baits. But that, I tell you what, that shaky head's been doing real good, and drop shots as well. It's kind of a mixed bag. Just like I said a couple of weeks ago, just grab your tackle box, shut your eyes, grab something, you'll probably catch something. A lot of pound to 2 pound fish are being caught, with occasional larger one as well. Some people have been, a lot of the fishermen have been out in the main lake area down by the dam, Long Creek, and some people have been going up in the James catching quite a few fish as well. So bass fishing, very good at Table Rock. Speaking of Table Rock, there's been some pretty doggone good walleye fishing. They're not catching a lot of walleye in certain areas, but they're just picking up stragglers. They're really not found the big groups as of yet, but that will be happening. My favorite time to fish walleye at Table Rock is June, mid-June, all through July, early August. So we have some good walleye fishing taking place out there. Some of the boys have been going out trolling the shad, the flicker shads or the flicker minnows off some of the points. Other people have been using jig and night crawler. And this brings up a point I want to talk about, the jig fishing. I used to have a company called Gary Heydrich Fish Getters, and we sold those rascals all over the country. We were in the catalog with Bass Pro and also back in the mid-'80s with Cabela's. I designed this bait many years ago, and it's a flathead stand-up jig. And one nice thing about that is when it's on the bottom, that hook is up off the bottom instead of being a round-headed jig that may be floundering from side to side. But this thing, if you put a half a night crawler on it, that thing is going to be standing straight up, and the walleye have a much greater hooking percent of hooking that bait. So if you can find yourself any walleye killers, do it, because I promise you they'll catch you fish. And I love color. Do walleye love color? You bet. When they're on a big feed, just a ball-headed, jig with a half a night crawler, they'll hit it. But if they're a little finicky, color makes a big difference, because when you cast these fluorescent colors out, if a walleye are back out of the way, they can be attracted to that color and move to it. In fact, what I like to do is take here's my top colors that I like to use. I like number one, fluorescent chartreuse, that hot chartreuse. Well, that's the number one color of all time as far as I'm concerned. Number two is that orange. Boy, I've got a lot of walleye on orange. Number three is a hot pink. Walleye love hot pink. On one of my many fishing trips with Jimmy Houston, he said, boy, this hot pink really catches fish, especially after a frontal change, after a weather change. Seems like hot pink's a little bit better, but hot pinks will catch fish sometimes when all other colors will fail. And I like to put, of course, on these flat-headed jigs, I like some grubs, and I'll mix the grubs up, the colors. I might have orange with white, or I may have orange with a chartreuse tail. I may have chartreuse head with a white tail. Mix it up. And another top color, especially at Table Rock, I've got a lot of fish on, would be the fluorescent hot blue. Boy, that blue really can catch fish on Table Rock. Other colors can be smoke and so forth. But don't overlook colors, because you can draw fish to you, especially if they're out any distance away. Sometimes I'll make fan cast where I know walleye might be off of a deep point or off some flats. And then once I make several fan casts, I may just drop my bait right to the side of the boat, crank it up or crank off the boat, and just sit there and jig it. And sometimes I'll drift it. And here, these baits are great for drifting, because that flat head is on the bottom, the hook straight up. Drift it with a half a night crawler, drift the points, drift the flats. This works out real good. So a little tip on walleye fishing. And walleye fishing is going to get better, I promise you, at Table Rock, Bull Shoals, Stockton, and just hang in there. We'll do it. Okay, let's go out to Lake Taneycomo right now. Once Braden was out the other day on Lake Taneycomo, and look at this photo. Braden caught his first rainbow trout ever. Hey, drift fishing's been pretty good at Lake Taneycomo. What they're doing, of course, they're not running water over the gates anymore, but they are generating quite a bit of water, sucking that down from Table Rock. And so drift fishing has been good. Spoons have been good, little Cleo spoons. That has been working. White jigs are still catching fish at Taneycomo, and some people have been drifting night crawlers or minnows. Others have been using just a power eggs. Berkeley Power eggs. Best color seems to be orange or pink or white. So you might catch yourself some nice rainbow trout at Lake Taneycomo. Some people have been going up in the trophy area throwing jerk baits and picking up some nice browns on occasion as well. Okay, over at Shoals Lake, about the same report as last week. They've been picking up some real nice bass at Bull Shoals, mid-lake, the lower lake. And in the morning hours, topwater baits are still good. They've been fishing pop R's. They've been using some whopper ploppers, buzz baits if there's a little wind. And so check out some topwater action at Bull Shoals. And during the day, they've been going off some of these long flats and 30 feet of water, long points on Ned rig has been good. Drop shots have been good. Other times people are going back into the coves and the creek areas where the water is up in that new brush, flipping some plastic worms, Texas style. Also lizards have been good as well. So Bull Shoals looks good for bass for the upcoming weekend, and they have been picking up some pretty decent walleye on occasion. They've been trolling flicker shads and flicker minnows, and also they've been doing some spoon fishing out there for walleye at Bull Shoals. All right, let's go on out to Stockton Lake now. By golly, there's a lot of water out there. Some boat ramps are closed, but some of the boys are catching fish out there. How about my old buddy Jeff Deckard? He was out the other day, and look at these beautiful crappie that he caught. Now, let me tell you about Jeff. He catches fish not so much on jigs and minnows, but he'll use those crankbaits. He'll use crankbaits, the Arky crankbaits, and they have a lot of color to it, and he'll get out there and fish around the brush and use those crankbaits, and I'll show you his box. A lot of color on these crankbaits. So Jeff Deckard, boy, quite a crappie fisherman, and he loves to use crankbaits. So check that out. Might try that. It's a little something different out at Stockton. And also, I do want to say that Austin and Jacob Gardner was out the other day fishing for crappie at Stockton and picked up a nice mess. Look at these fish. Good going, guys. And I tell you another thing. The walleye fishing has been pretty good at Stockton. Not many people fishing for them, but they have been going out trolling some of the points and some of the flats and down by the dam with your flicker shads, your crankbaits, and also just jigs with a half a night crawler. Been going out in the morning hours or late evening hours, and some of the boys have been picking up quite a few walleye out at Stockton. Looks good this weekend. A lot of water out there. They got more places to hide, but you can find them. I'm telling you, some of the boys are. Okay, out at Truman Lake, my golly, a lot of water out at Truman. Whew, a lot of water. Some of the boys have been going out and catching some pretty good catfish on shad, and other people, somebody said here again that there's a lot of water out here, more places for them to hide, but I keep looking and I find them, and they are catching some crappie out at Truman. You know, in 1993, I was living in the Bucksaw area, and we had that high water in 93. What I did is found isolated big, tall cedar trees. And I remember, boy, I had one cedar tree. I don't know how many fish I caught out of that rascal. So this might be an idea for you if you're out cruising around Truman. It's tough with all this high water, no doubt about it. And the marina's having a hard time out there, but some people are catching some fish out there. So try some fishing out at Truman this weekend. Below the dam, they're still picking up some big catfish at the upper end of the Lake of the Ozarks and below the dam. And they've been picking those mainly up on bluegill and some shad. And they've been picking up some walleye, of course, and some crappie, white bass, and hybrids as well. So that might be a good place to be for the upcoming weekend. All right, Lake of the Ozarks, we've had some real good bass reports the last few days at Lake of the Ozarks. They've been picking up some fish on, they're still picking up some nice fish on spinner baits out there, especially if it's overcast with the rain and the wind. Spinner baits on the banks and the points, secondary points, and on square-billed crankbaits. And I've had some reports of some fish still being caught on jerk baits. And of course, in the warmer parts of the day, don't overlook that Ned rig. And of course, we've been picking up some fish on drop shots as well. And the crappie fishing, of course, is fair out at Lake the Ozark. They've pretty well moved off the bank. You know, they're off the bank. You can find your isolated brush piles and around some of the marinas, and they have been picking up some nice crappie at Lake the Ozarks. So try this out for the upcoming weekend. And out at Norfolk Lake, I've had a pretty good report of crappie off the bank now. in some of those man-made brush piles. And they're using minnows, that lake's high, and they're using minnows straight lining over these brush piles, picking up some, when they do catch crappie, catching up some real nice fish. And the bass fishing's been pretty good at North Fork as well. Some topwater fishing in the morning hours. By the way, backing up just a hair, they've been picking up some nice fish on topwater in the early morning hours at Lake the Ozarks as well. Like, I think I overlooked Table Rock as well. I was out the other day and picked up a couple real nice fish and several smaller ones on topwater. Pop-Rs have been working. They've been picking up some fish on the small spooks and the larger spooks as well. And whopper ploppers, buzz baits, so try this out. Try any good bass lake this weekend. Try some topwater in the early morning and late evening hours, that's for sure. A few stripers have been caught at North Fork as well in the main lake area, down around 40 feet of water. That's the same way at Beaver Lake too. I've had some reports mid-lake area for stripers, and some people have been using a large shad if they're finding some shad, and also big spoons are kind of big jerkbait, plastic jerkbaits. They have been picking up some stripers out there, and the crappie fishing have moved off the bank pretty well, and they're catching them over the brush right now, and they've been having some pretty good bass fishing at Beaver as well. Well, we have some great photos coming your way. Brandon and I selected some great photos, and he'll be showing these to you here in just a few minutes, but we want to thank you very much for being with us today. Be sure to like and share, and be sure to subscribe, as we mentioned. And if you have any photos, we're getting a lot of photos, and we thank you very much for sending those photos in from all over this part of the country, and we really appreciate it. Just go to our email. Email us at fishandchums@gmail.com. Hey, enjoy these photos. Boy, we have some great kids photos and some fun stuff coming your way. Check you here next week. Go out and get bit this weekend. Happy outdoors, everyone.